Well, thank you all for coming. We're going to get started here. Just a little bit of technical assistance. So thank you for coming. Wonderful to see so many people. We really appreciate you coming in person and online for those of you who are farther away. So a couple of housekeeping items. We have drinks and appetizers and cake to celebrate out in the entry. Yep. And restrooms are out, straight out, as well as anybody needs to use those. Karen and I have worked with the University of Minnesota and Lighthouse Child and Family Services on this project, and unfortunately she cannot join us today, so she's very sad and sends her apologies for not being able to be here. So we're just gonna dive in. Maybe a certain distance from us. Okay, just to move the arrow for you. Sure. Not. Here. I saw one of the students. He was telling. Says it's on. So for you, for those of you that. The Central Regional Development Commission covered our 75 counties and 78. They used to be called the Pick'em counties, but Sagawai, Sanikenevik, Mille Lacs, and Pine. And these are the same counties that the East Central Regional Development Commission and the Regional Transportation Coordinating Council cover. So as I said, Karen wasn't able to be here. We have done an extensive transportation coordinating service plan, the local human services transit coordination plan. And what kind of bubbled to the top, it was a survey and very extensive research project into all the transportation options and gaps that were happening in our region. And quite quickly bubbling to the top was the fact that people couldn't travel further as they needed to. They kind of got stuck. So as we went to the university, or as we went to the service providers to say this is an issue in our region, they said, well, bring us the hardcore data. And so that's how we connected with the University of Minnesota. Again, we did the human services coordination plan. Yep, we had to demonstrate the need to the providers. The U provided us credible information through their Empowering Small Communities project. And we connected. So all of this information, you have slides in front of you for those folks online. All of this, the slides for this information are on our website. We can email them to you. And we connected with Jessica from Lighthouse Child and Family Services along with this project. So I'm going to introduce Jessica and she can tell you a little bit about Lighthouse.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, and it's so awesome to see such a full crowd here today. So thank you again for coming. So Lighthouse is a proud partner with the ECDRC and the University of Minnesota for this project. So really excited to be here today. the ones that have computer.
Yeah, you have to get a little closer.
Sorry. Makes life.
It's okay, so that's all right.
Do you mind advancing for me? This is an updated life.
Okay, there you go.
So I'm Jessica Peterson and I am the program coordinator for our day treatment program. And alongside Julie Hanberg, our executive director, and Ryan Hagan, our day treatment program director. And so really, I've been with Lighthouse for 10 years, and along the 10 years in many different facets, roles, have experienced transportation and working in our within our mental health services, for everything from skill groups across different schools to scheduling training itself for our preschool day treatment program, we have one little group, to now 2 day treatment programs across ages 3 to 12, spanning from St. Cloud to Malacca or Princeton. And so through that, I've really learned of how much transportation and the lack of transportation affects our community. And it really affects the services they're able to access. Lighthouse. It's okay. It's okay. You can stay. Yeah, if you could go back for a second. Thank you. Really proud that at Lighthouse we really advocate for advocating for services to be accessible to our community. And just kudos and thank you to the Lighthouse team, Julie and Ray, for freeing up me to be able, because I'm very passionate about this, to be able to work on transportation and advocacy as well. Also a shout out to a lot of our operations team is here too, and they work in transportation for Lighthouse and supporting our clients on a daily basis. So thank you all too.
Can you explain, because I don't quite understand how this whole Lighthouse thing works and this transportation and the kids and whatever else? I mean, does kids from school go to the Lighthouse place and for therapy, or
Yes,
what do you mean?
yes, I'm excited to unravel all of that information as we go here. So hopefully your questions will be answered.
Okay.
But for sure, we can follow up later too, if I don't answer specific questions. So Lighthouse Child and Family Services, we provide mental health services across the community, from services ranging from diagnostic assessments for all ages, to play therapy, day treatment, adult services, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, intensive outpatient and intellectual therapy. So really quite specialized service. And so I'll just check my notes here to make sure I don't miss out on anything. And so, yeah, so we provide a variety of services. We got a lot going on. We are a community-based service again, and we serve all ages. You can go to the next slide.
Using my left hand.
We have offices in Malacca and Cambridge for outpatient services. So when you're thinking about anything therapy. And then Princeton is where we have our day treatment program for ages 3 to 12. And then St. Cloud, we have the day treatment program ages 2 to 6 years old. So we've really expanded in the last few years. Also, we have a variety of schools that we're providing schooling services. I mean, everywhere across Graham, Cambridge, Foley, Malacca, Ogilvie, Amania, Princeton, Rum River Special Ed Co-op. So we're providing a breadth of services across a large, vast area within our rural communities. And I think we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're expanding. We're noticing that our community is we're referrals are telling us that our community needs a lot of mental health supports. We have been expanding, supporting, we want to meet the needs of our community. That's our goal. And so we want to be able to have people come to us. And I wish we could meet everyone else, meet everyone in their living room, but it's just not an opportunity right. So we want to get people to us to be able to provide those supports. And so also we have noticed trends in the last few years that both of our day treatment programs are getting referrals from over an hour away because of the specialized services we provide. Again, trauma-informed, relationship-based, it's different than a lot of other day treatment programs. And so this poses also a challenge because there's a high volume of referrals that come in because of the specialized service. And there's long wait lists for other agencies. There's also not a lot of other agencies that provide the services, these specialized mental health programs. And so I'm making sure I speak on all the different things. And again, our day treatment program, we utilize med rides, so non-emergency medical transportation. I'll get into this a little bit later. We also tap into school districts that are able to transport. But again, we have a very intensive program to get children to our site. And so that's why we're interested in transportation for that program, as well as our outpatient offices. If people aren't able, if they live outside of the city limits, they're not able to walk to their appointments. And they don't have access to a vehicle, or friends that have access to a vehicle, they're not able to their appointments. So some of this is you all know, but again, just trying to explain a little bit more. So you can go to the next one. So in our work as mental health providers, again, we have observed this correlation. Like we're in our field, in our, speaking from our scope, but we're seeing struggling families not able to access the resources that they need. So this has really become, again, a passion for our agency, and how can we help our clients and our family and friends when we didn't think transportation was going to be one of our passions within mental health, but it sure is turning out to be one. So with the increase and diversity of referrals, we're learning that there are unique challenges to rural transportation. It's different than city transportation. And we're learning that from our scope, our experience, there are systemic barriers to the access. Some examples include, one family that has one car, and they are trying to work multiple jobs. They're not able to drop their kids off at the day treatment program. They do need to utilize public transportation. Also, school transportation, which we rely on heavily, has different rules depending on the district. And again, if kids are on an IEP or not an IEP, there's so many variables. So, and also no summer transportation. Districts have their budgets and their abilities. And so, typically there's no summer transportation for the clients we serve. Limited or no transportation providers are available for these non-emergency medical transportation rides for a lot of the times when we call. So we don't have any providers in the Omania area is what we hear. So there's just not the companies, there's not access. Again, this is from our scope and what we've been noticing for the last 10 years. And so that's why we're passionate about highlighting these things. Inconsistent insurance coverage. So every insurance coverage is different, as you all know, and lots of rules and differences between those variables. And so that's another barrier for individuals. They might not qualify for it. And so what we've noticed is about 30% of our referrals just for our day treatment program are not able to be met because they're denied transportation. So that's a pretty big number, 30%. And that's why we're again, very passionate about this. Move on to the next slide. So why did we solicit, this project, the U of M? So through our relationship with the ECTRC, Karen and Michelle, I have been engaging in the advisory board meetings and just learning as much as I can about this field, this community, all that I can to help our kids, to help our families at Lighthouse. And so the opportunity came up that there's an application for a U of M, empowering small Minnesota communities program. And so I said, what the heck, I'll apply. You never know if somebody's gotta do it. And we were accepted, I think largely on the demographic of our clients that we serve. Our community being rural, we are a distance away from city locations like St. Cloud and Minneapolis. Close enough, but not, not super far away. So I feel like we're in a little awkward area. So those demographics, the needs of what we experience seem to match the type of information that they're looking for. So those partnerships made sense to us and we're lucky enough to get it. And we have a common goal to increasing sustainability of transportation to our rural community. On the next slide. Which I think, so we're hoping that this research project shines a light on the unique needs and opportunities we have in rural transportation. What exists, what doesn't exist, what's working, what doesn't work. We hope this project validates our experiences and brings our region and counties together to think outside our silos and city limits and continue innovative conversations and action. So thank you. This is my contact information. If you'd like a little bit more context around how Lighthouse got involved with this project and how we're working in the community, I'm happy to have further conversations and looking forward to further partnerships. So thank you. And now, so now I'm proud and excited to introduce Frank Dalma and Ali Razakani. We're part of our research team at the Minnesota University of Minnesota Extension. Thank you.
So thanks so much, Jessica. I can just take one more try with that clicker and
Okay. And I brought an extra one, so we can try.
got one more we can try too. This one was from Ali Reza, so we're on the future. Ali Reza gets to take it back home. So, there we go. See, it's that magic chip they implant in our brain. Yeah, so again, thank you, Jessica, thank you, Michelle, thank you, Karen, for the opportunity to do this work and the opportunity to present. I'll try to get into the how we managed to get this all together detail in a slide or two. But essentially, when the opportunity came into the Empowering Small Minnesota Communities project, I worked with Ali Reza and the Q title we put on this, Improving Transit for Young, Old, and Everyone in East Central Minnesota, an ESMC project. So that kind of covers our goals. It also meets the university requirement of a title that has to have at least 5 words. But what brought us together is the Empowering Small Minnesota Communities program. This was a product of the 2023 Minnesota legislature, which passed a law saying that there should be a program to provide support and technical assistance to small communities on infrastructure project analysis, including consideration of sustainability, resiliency, adaptation to the impact of climate change, enough words to say that yes, this project qualified. The vision then that was brought to the project after it was passed by the legislature and we made it happen at the University of Minnesota is to assist small Minnesota communities to develop resilient infrastructure and strengthen their social, environmental, and economic fabric. The goal of the program to work directly with small Minnesota communities, not to just collect data and process it back in the Twin Cities, but to actually engage with the communities to efforts that will hopefully add value and bring more benefit to the communities and maximize the benefit from state investments. add capacity to small communities in pursuit of their goals, and support development projects that would be competitive for a wide range of future funding. In other words, this was seen as just the beginning of the projects that we do, that we would not come in and just do something that solves all the problems all at once. So this project is one of several that were funded in the first round of Empowering Small Minnesota Communities grant. There's a second round that was just awarded, and then the legislature provided more money in this most recent session to continue the program for a couple of more years. This project was somewhat unique in that we had both the application from Lighthouse and the application from East Central RTCC, Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee, which meant that we were able to go double barrel in our scope of work. And that allowed both Ali Reza from engineering and myself from the Humphrey School to bring a qualitative and a quantitative set of work to give us a bigger, more complete picture of what were the transportation needs. And so specifically, we decided that we wanted to articulate what are the transit needs in this area, noting in particular that are related to youth transportation, which is the Lighthouse area, and non-emergency medical trips, which is both East Central and Lighthouse. We wanted to note the legal and policy constraints that have helped kind of contribute to those gaps. You know, why do those gaps exist? Note areas where we needed to gather more data to enhance the current service, and then provide suggestions that might address some of these needs. Again, we didn't promise that we were going to solve everything once, but begin to articulate based upon the additional knowledge that we were able to gather from this process and move things forward. So this is the research team. Again, I'm Frank Dalma with the Humphrey School. I got to bear the title of principal investigator, which means I essentially signed the expense reports. The whole team had their individual contributions. When I'm done, we'll hear from Professor Connie, who will talk about the quantitative work they did at the engineering school. The work that work was wouldn't have been here without the contributions of Juan Beck, who's also here with us today, and maybe answering any questions as well. Michael Darger from University Extension was the person who actually conducted the focus groups. Some of you may have participated in those groups. You may remember Michael, you may not remember that I was there for most of them too, because with Michael running the group, I was able to sit in the background and observe and take notes. And then also I want to give credit to Ted Jessup, who was a Humphrey student this last year, just graduated. He's now seeking his career in Washington, D.C., if I recall correctly. But when you do 6 focus groups that I'll talk about, you get a lot of comments and data. And so we brought Ted on to help us get those typed up, articulated, and analyzed. Did I cover everybody? I should also point out that the program itself, the Empowering Small Minnesota Communities program, is administered by Extension. Molly Zins is the executive director for the Central Minnesota region. Things worked out that she was not able to be here today, but Connie Carlson is here with us. And so as we have any questions or further exclamations about the program that come through with this, she's here as well, but she can make it. So to get into the substance of the work, it only took us 35 minutes. That's pretty good. There's out there in the lobby, there is a handout that actually covers just about every transit service that Karen and the East Central RTCC have found. When we got into doing the work, we focused on, what are the services that are provided, the programs we heard about most often: Arrowhead Transit, Timber Trails, TriCap. We heard quite a bit in the focus groups about Shoe-Trans, so we included that as well, even though they're limited to providing certain sector or certain type of trips. They're not general public transportation. Stark Transport as well. And then Jefferson Line, so was one that we also wanted to pick up on and keep on our radar, given their inner city, ability to connect out to the rest of the state service. As far as the transit services that we really wanted to look at, they can be grouped into 3 different types. I'll start at the bottom with the hybrid service and point out that it is only provided by one of the providers down in the very southern part of the area. So the 2 areas that were most important, and I should give credit to Twango and Ali Reza for putting it into this articulation, but we have demand responsive transit. This is a service that, if you unpack that term, is exactly what it sounds like. It's as a trip is needed. The job of the transit provider is to respond to that. Basically, any origin and destination within its service area is a trip that they will provide. It does require a reservation, and it does require that it has to happen within their service hours. But that trip is not based upon a fixed route or a fixed timetable. Route deviation is one where the demand is enough along a route that they do offer a fixed route that people know where the bus is going to be, and within certain times. So an example of this is the Graham Express, which basically follows. I put you on the spot, Quango. Do you remember which road this is?
Highway 65.
Highway 65. Okay, there we go. Experts in the room. Well, it'll offer runs at certain times of the day, but you don't have to make yourself right to Highway 65. It will deviate off of that route within this pinkish shape to be able to get to somebody's door for providing that service. And then the service areas of the services that we talked about are shown on this map. So we again can see there's some areas, the white areas here, that are not necessarily covered specifically by a particular service. Those are some of the gaps that we'll talk about later. But also you can see where there is service provided, and there's quite a number of providers within this overall area. So I said there was a qualitative and a quantitative piece. So the area that Michael Darger and I led was on the qualitative. And we did a number of focus groups. I'll get into that detail in a bit, but to get to the point, some of the things that we noted were in hearing from the participants is that there are gaps. Residents face barriers in getting to St. Cloud, Duluth, Twin Cities areas, even regional hubs like Pine City and Princeton, for things as basic as food access or medical or educational needs. We also found some time gaps. Evenings and weekends did not necessarily have very good service, even though people did have service Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, 8 to 6, generally speaking. Volunteer drivers is a program that folks know about, folks like to use, but it's a service that has its own challenges right now. And so we heard about that. But then on the flip side, there are services provided that some of the participants don't know about, or the participants knew people that were like, how did you get that right? How does that exist? There could be just an increase in utilization of the existing services by providing more information about the options that are out there for people that need it. The process, again, the partnership, these were participants recruited by East Central, RDC, and Lighthouse. Michael and I became the researchers who just then arrived and conducted the group for the folks that they had brought in. We did record those meetings and transcribe the participants' comments, and that's what gave us our findings. We had 6 different groups, groups that were not part of their job to worry about transportation. Were provided $75 Visa gift cards to participate. Those for whom their job is transportation, we hope that that could be just include their time that they contributed here would be part of their job and treated as a work duty. This was a focus group method that was articulated by Richard Kruger, who is a scholar in this area, and we kind of followed his good book. So I mentioned we had 6 groups. One was actual users of the service, people who cannot drive. That was recruited largely by Lighthouse. And they're the ones who actually ride the service and told us directly about their experience. The second and third groups were recruited by East Central, and these are people who would be eligible riders, but aren't necessarily riders. So some of them had experience, some of them would be folks who could take advantage of it, but had not for whatever reason. And that was something that we wanted to pick up is, if you can use these services, why don't you? So that was 2 groups that we did. And they occurred, one up in Onamia, and the other was here in this room. Groups 4 and 5 were what we call mixed stakeholders. These are the people, kind of like Jessica's group, that they can't do their job if people can't get transportation. And so we wanted to hear from their experience in trying to figure out how to make transportation work so that they can provide their services. And we did that, one both in Mille Lacs County and one in Kanabec County. And then the last group that we held were called Group 6, was the possibly most important. That was with the transit providers themselves. We wanted to hear from them. How they provide, what they provide, what constraints do they face? Because I've done this type of research in several other sorts of contexts, and when you first start the work, the first thing you find out is that this is a transit bashing opportunity, and the board providers just are like, we're doing all we can. So we wanted to make sure that we're hearing from the transit providers in this process as well. Like I said, we did this at a variety of different sites. Several of them are right here in this room. We also went up to Onamia and conducted a group up there. We did a group in Malacca, and both at the Lighthouse offices and then also at the Mille Lacs County offices. I could conduct the whole group. I've got all the questions here, but I'm just going to summarize these. So for the first groups, we started out just with a kind of an icebreaker. What do they like about the community? Try to get them moving on, open up about positive things before we delve into their transportation experiences. We asked both about how do they use the service, as well as how does the service not meet their needs. We asked them, and finally about, if they have the power, what changes might they like to make. Then with the providers, we got much more into the weeds, asking them about the territory that they serve, what time of day do they serve, where do they serve, who are their key customers, or who are the key users of their services, where do they start to see areas that they might like to serve, but they cannot, what constraints do they face, if they had the resources, what changes would they make, what improvements would they make. And then also, are there interagency or other innovations that we should be aware of and talking about? So that's the process. What did we learn? First of all, is that not all rides are created equal. Medical rides have a higher level of service. I mentioned the Shoetran provider earlier. That place got gold stars. Unfortunately for most folks, those are only for medical trips. You cannot use Shoetran to go run errands or go visit family or something like that. We did find, however, that these providers are human. And so we had some very happy stories from the users talking about if the driver was feeling flexible or had some time, they might stop at the grocery store on the way home from the medical trip or whatever to be able to help people meet not just their medical needs, but get a little food service or something like that. But everybody recognized that that's kind of a one-off. It happens as it happens. It's not something that they can count on to be able to meet all of their transportation needs. Also, again, geographic disparities. We found that folks were had gotten pretty good at using north-south trips as they're available, from Malacca to Princeton, from Mora to Cambridge, so forth. However, if people needed to get to St. Cloud or over to Pine City and Hinckley as ways to connect to other things, that service was much harder to be able to make work. So we heard a number of comments about, boy, it'd be great just to get to Pine City, because then you can connect to Jefferson lines, and from there you can start to access the world. But if you're in Onamia, forget it. Not going to get there. There's no bus, no nothing, folks. We need a bus, any bus, once or twice a month, just to get groceries. So there's some real what we call transit deserts that we heard from. Also, the service time limitations, as I mentioned earlier, getting a medical trip Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. That usually can be served. But if you're somebody who's working during that time and you can't get off, if you've got other transportation needs in the evenings or weekends, in many areas, it's just, if you can't get a ride from somebody or if whatever vehicle you're relying on is not working, you're not going to be able to make that trip. And then also to the volunteer driver programs, I'll point out that, we have a few really, really vivid quotes from here, but I don't want that to sound like the volunteer program is not a good thing. Really, one of the things about Minnesota transportation and transit is the strength of the volunteer driver programs. However, demographics have changed, where it used to be baby boomers starting to retire with time on their hands, serving folks from the greatest generation and the silent generation just in between. We now have the baby boomers needing the rides, and Gen Xers like me are still working. They can't find the time to be able to provide the volunteer time that used to be available. And then similarly, just because of that kind of shortage, and then some other issues like not being able to cover miles where you're not actually driving the person, and so reimbursement is limited. You get it's just harder to find the best kinds of drivers, and so we hear some stories that occasionally some bad apples slip through, and so that made the experience not one that folks wanted to repeat. And then operational inefficiencies, we could say that just operational issues. It's things we heard about, the service providers talked about. Again, the unloaded miles, that if you have to provide long trips without passengers in there, that is a cost that is not one that is easily recouped one way or another. Trying to coordinate between systems, different providers and so forth have different technologies, different scheduling service software, so on and so forth. So it doesn't become an easy, oh sure, we'll coordinate across three trips, but you'll know exactly who's going to be taking you where, when, that sort of thing. That is not something that is done automatically. And some participants said that when they did have to do with a transfer service, or when they needed it, that this was not available. And so when it comes to some of the innovations that we asked participants, if you could make the decisions with unlimited time and resources, what improvements would you suggest? The idea of a mobility hub or a central location where folks can come together, multiple providers can come together and can have an easy transfer was desired. Placing those hubs in places that could increase efficiency and reduce deadhead or no load miles was something they thought could work out. And then also just more outreach about what are the alternatives. How about a website where you can put in what you need and somebody who can help sees it and can be able to respond? It's something that in a major metro area in the Twin Cities, I can actually just go to Google Maps and say I'm in point A, I want to get to point B. It will tell me how Metro Transit or some of the other providers can get there. That kind of information, that kind of coordination does not necessarily, well, one, it doesn't happen easily. There are people behind it to make it happen. And that kind of resource and capacity has not reached out to areas like this, and that's something that most would love to see. So that was me talking a lot of words about a lot of words that we've heard. That's qualitative research. I'd like to turn it over to Ali Reza now to talk about, so if we look at the maps and we look at the numbers, what do you see?
Thank you, Frank. Thanks, Frank. Just checking on the time, Michelle. Should we continue? Do you want to take it 2 minutes? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ali Reza Khani. I'm an associate professor of transportation engineering at the University of Minnesota. And before starting my presentation, I want to introduce my PhD student, Konko Bak, who is going to be Dr. Bak. He did most of the quantitative analysis, and he should receive the credit. But I'm going to explain it. There's a lot of maps and numbers. More detailed information is in the report, but I'll try to explain them in this presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So for the purpose of evaluating the transit service in the region, we conducted 4 types of quantitative analysis. Here is a list of the analyses, and I'm going to explain each of them in the following slides. The first type of analysis is transit service availability, basically to quantifying how many service trips are available from any point in the region. And then the second part of analysis is transit coverage, basically looking at what destinations can be accessed by those available services. Then the third part is transit directionality, back to the point that Frank mentioned that an understood issue was that the service is mostly covering north-south and east-west. We actually tried to test that situation quantitatively and measure that. And the fourth part is transit gap identification that leads to some recommendation for service improvements. So starting with transit service availability, the goal is to quantify how many transit service trips are available per day at any point in the region. And for the purpose of that quantification, we use the transit operational hours, service hours, and the number of trips. If it's a scheduled service, we just refer to the timetable, counted the number of service trips. If it's a demand responsive transit, we try to estimate the time between consecutive trips. And eventually, we calculated how many trips are available per day for any location. Then we use GIS, Geographic Information Systems, to create polygons that shows the service area and a number is assigned to each of them. And eventually we combine everything together to get a map like that on the right side. This is a single color map with color intensity showing that the darker areas have more transit service available, and the lighter color area, they have fewer or no service available. Here are the results in the region, and it shows that the cities, they enjoy better transit service as high as 30 to more than 40 trips per day combined among different service providers. And rural areas, they don't have a lot of services available. And in some cases, we have only 1 trip per week or 1 trip per month. So this is definitely limited services. And in some areas, we don't have any color basically showing that apparently there is no transit service in rural areas. Looking at the time dimension, the service availability in different times of the day and days of the week is different. And again, more maps are available in the report, but just showing an example here, all routes during the weekday business hours, we have quite some coverage and quantity of the service. But if you look at after 5 p.m., some of the services are not available anymore, and that creates some limitation for people who need to make trips after hours or during weekends. The second analysis that I introduced is the transit coverage. Basically, now that we looked at transit availability from any point, let's see where these services take people to. I mean, what destinations can be accessed through these services. And for that, we looked at both within county coverage and regional coverage, which is beyond each county. Here's an example that shows for Kennebec County, for example, starting from Mora, where we are now, there are two types of services available, the demand responsive service and the route deviation service. Then based on that service, we counted how many county subdivisions can be reached by that service. For example, in the case of Kennebec County, 16 out of the 19 county subdivisions can be accessed at least partially. So the coverage is 84%. So this part of the county can be accessed. And then going beyond the county, we looked at, okay, how many more areas can be covered beyond each county? So we have the within county coverage and outside the county or regional coverage. And here is the summary of the results. If you look at the red bars here, and this is for the 6 cities in the region. The red bars shows the number of subdivision within each county. For example, in Mille Lacs County, from Mille Lacs, 13 county subdivisions can be reached, which represents 52% of the county subdivisions. So these percentages refer to within county. And then if you look at the green bars, that shows the number of county subdivisions in the region that can be accessed with the service. That includes the within county and beyond the county. And here, for example, for Mora, we have 47 county subdivisions accessible from Mora. So if you look at the overall trend, we see that Mora and North Branch have a higher percentage of within county coverage and also larger green bars showing better accessibility to the areas around them. But places like Malacca and Center City, they have both lower percentage of within county coverage and also a smaller number of regional coverage.
Just out of curiosity, is this you took into consideration like the transfer data, like transfer points in between?
That's a great question. And yes, we considered up to one transfer. Any direct service or up to one transfer is included in the analysis. If it requires more than one transfer, we thought that is too difficult and less realistic. So we did not include multiple transfers. So here's again the summary of the results. The third kind of analysis is the directionality. Back to the point that Frank mentioned, based on the focus group, people mentioned that there is challenges going east-west, and the service tends to be stronger in north-south. We try to actually quantify that, and this is a more involved calculation. I'm not going to talk about the calculations, but basically we divided the service into the vertical north-south and horizontal east-west services, and then we calculated the ratio. If the ratio is greater than 1, it means that it's more vertical, and we see that for all the counties in the region, these ratios are greater than 1. that indicates that service dominance is in the north-south direction more than east-west. That confirms the finding from the qualitative research that service in the east-west is limited compared to the north-south. If you look at the overall number, it's 1.9. That's close to 2. That tells something. It says that, again, the service in north south is greater than east-west.
Doesn't Pine County throw that off though, because that 3.3 on your final number, doesn't that throw the average off?
That's a great question. I'm going to refer to Franco who did the calculation.
So multiple routes are serving Pine County, especially centered on the Pine City, and most of the services are running alongside the I-35, which is highly north-south directionality. And we do the weighted average for all the routes inside of Pine County, weighted by the number of trips that each route serves. So the numbers are the weighted average for all the transit routes inside the Pine County. Yeah.
So it doesn't really throw it off because it is weighted. So it's like the 1.9, it's not an average, it's a weighted average.
Yeah, it's there. Weighted average.
Yeah. Yes.
2 slides back, the picture right there,
Yes.
doesn't say anything about our Cambridge run, Walmart.
Cambridge
Not too worried about.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, for those coverage analysis, we did not include the routes which has less than once daily services, like weekly services and monthly services are not included already. So thank you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Paul. If I may continue to the fourth part of the analysis, this is basically trying to identify the gap that could lead to some recommendation for service expansion. And for that purpose, we define the gap as the difference between the potential travel demand and the service availability. If there's greater demand but less service, that's a gap, and vice versa. In the absence of actual trip data, we use a model to estimate the travel demand, and that's a gravity model, which is a well-established model in transportation field, has been used by planning organizations for more than 50 years. And that indicates that for the potential trips between 2 points, point A and P to B, we can look at the population of the places and the travel time or distance between the 2 places. The more populous town A and B are, the higher likelihood of having some trips between them. And the farther they are located, the less likely that there will be trips. So with that, we just try to calculate the travel demand index. That doesn't show the exact number of trips that are happening between 2 points, but more like an indicator of what is the demand between 2 points. And then we use the transit impedance as a measure of service, or how difficult it is to go from A to B, indicated by the number of transfers required to go from A to B. Yes.
Is that formula more commonly used in metro areas?
This has been definitely in the metro area, but also in broader context too.
Do you have an example? Like the work area, like where the formula?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm happy to provide it on offline. Okay, so yes, we use this definition to identify the transit gap. Again, there are more numbers here and more numbers in the report, but this matrix basically shows the pair of cities, the calculated gap index. The lower part of the matrix shows gap index. We can skip that, and we can just focus on the upper part of the matrix that shows for any pair of cities what is the ranking of the gap. And here we see the first rank is Cambridge Princeton, and this is a symmetric number, so it's both from Cambridge to Princeton and from Princeton to Cambridge. And the second one is North Branch, Princeton, and the third one is Cambridge with that. But the observation is that the higher rank calculated gaps are all within Mille Lacs County, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that the service in Mille Lacs County is not connected to other counties, and that is the gap. I'm going to talk about it more in future slides. So the observations are one, Mille Lacs County needs intercity transit, and the other observation is that improvements in the form of service expansion beyond the county should be the priority over increasing the frequency of the service. It's more important to extend the trips to cover more areas or make connections between services rather than providing more and more service in limited areas. So based on all of the analysis, both quantitative and qualitative analysis, we came up with 4 high-level recommendations for service improvement. The first one is connecting Milaca to Mora, and this is the gap that I was referring to. There's service in Mille Lacs County, but there is a gap between the service in Kennebec County. So this is the gap. So one recommendation is to potentially provide some service between Milaca and Mora through a route that is 21 miles, or potentially expand the service, the demand response 4.4 miles to make the connection between the two cities. That addresses the east-west gap to a great extent, and it addresses the second largest gap identified by the analysis. The second recommendation is an extended service or a new service connecting Princeton to Cambridge. Again, it would address this is the first gap identified in the quantitative analysis. And again, it's part of the east-west service limitation, potentially addressing that. The third recommendation is providing some service from Schaefer to Taylorsville. Again, this is east-west, and this is going to be potentially connecting two populous cities. Trying to see what else I'm missing here. A 9-mile route or extension would be a potential solution. Yes, again, high demand area and east-west connectivity. And the fourth recommendation is potential extension of the service to Moose Lake, which is closer compared to Sandstone, and it connects to Jefferson Line, and from there people can go beyond the region. And this is again consistent with some of the findings from the focus group that people wanted and asked for connectivity with Jefferson Line so they can go to other places. So these are 4 high-level recommendations. More studies are needed, more coordinations and partnership with different service providers, but this could be some starting point. I think with that, I'm going to stop and hand it over to Frank for some concluding remarks.
Thanks, Alreza.
Thank you.
The other part of principal investigator is you get to read the last couple of slides. But really, this is the work of everyone. Just to summarize, in the focus group work, the qualitative work, we identified, there are travel needs that are not being met, especially for non-medical trips. Credit to the people of the area. There's lots of informal activity going on that are helping people meet their trips when there's not a service available. But we also heard from folks in those focus groups that they only have the capacity to ask a friend or a family member so many times to be able to give a trip. And so if something is provided as a regular service, they're going to be more likely to take advantage of it. And then the quantitative piece, as Alireza just showed, revealed that there are definitely areas that there's a lack of service or not as much service as could otherwise be provided based upon what to be the demand. So to combine those two sets of work into how to move forward, we've got those initial 4 sets of routes that you know, it's not something that we can snap our fingers and they should happen. As Ali Reza mentioned at the end of his remarks, there's much more work needs to be done, but that could be a starting point for finding opportunities for improved service. And then, as I mentioned, talking about the beginning, the purpose of the Empowering Small Minnesota Communities program is to get the conversation started, to move forward and find other resources, more conversations to be able to generate increased activity to go beyond even this 4 new routes to whole new ideas and innovations that we haven't even thought about yet. So that is where we'll move to questions. I will give Michelle or Jessica any chance for last word before we go into this. Any discussion?
I just wanted to make sure that we do have copies of all of the slides. You didn't get them there with the counter here, but they're also available on our website. On the agenda, there's a little QR code, so we can find them and then all of everyone's contact to the website. Yes, right.
And the executive, the executive summary, which kind of like meat and potatoes of what's covered today. And there's one.
Yeah, including printouts of those 4 routes. So take that very likely, just the sheets of it.
I'd like to start with, the elephant in the room is, what about the people in the rural areas? I mean, I've been hearing this for 25 years, that people in rural Sunrise, rural Canadian County, they can't get access with any of these programs. How do they get served?
Right, well, I mean, that's the continued conversation and, you know, with different types of services, demand responsive versus helping with the term.
Route aviation.
Route aviation services. So, in the areas with demand responsive services, that is, if they know how to be able to order a ride, they should be able to get it. Now, we do see gaps in those areas where that, there is not demand responsive service either. And, that is, something that continues conversation, because it just depends on what services are there, and move forward with that.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that one too. I know, we thank you Wise County because Wise County has helped us start a transportation committee just to start these conversations, and that might be something that each community needs to kick off. You know, now we know and have validation of the things we've been observing ourselves. And so, which it might take a bit of individualized and specialized work and solutions to help with those communities. So for example, Wise County is pretty much cut in half, and those folks over in Armenia are just really separated and aren't able to access Princeton, for example. And so they might need different solutions than other folks that are over in Chicago. And so I think that those are the things that we have to kind of kick off committees and work to find out, you know, what are the specifics we need to work to for each of those areas. And
Could I ask her a question?
sorry,
Well, I used to work for a congressman, and one of the big things we were working on was reimbursements for volunteer drivers, because it was way below the federal rate of like 39 cents a mile or something. But anyway, yeah.
15 cents, yeah.
And we were trying to work to get it up to the same as the IRS mileage reimbursement, but in the meantime, are your clients, if they get a ride by a volunteer driver, is that driver able to be reimbursed for that? Through their insurance or whatever?
so from our experience that we work a lot with Med Rides, a little bit have dabbled in volunteer program years ago, but it kind of fell away. But it heavily relied on those insurance payers, and so, and everyone's constricted by those low reimbursement rates. And so there's an onion of variables for each of these different silos. And so I think that's when we talk about what do we need, what's actually happening, who's paying that, that's the, who's paying for these things? What are the barriers to getting that payer to pay? And that kind of answers your question. And so we hope that with this project, we'll get some highlight on our communities. Some, I know we had, the EC, CRNC, had Tina Smith and folks here and the listening group. And so, working on those legislators, working with those people that make decisions, to hopefully help. Because it's that strong advocacy and someone to do it. So, yeah.
And I think some of those questions are the bigger picture legislative questions, like you mentioned, the volunteer drivers, for some reason, it's tied to the charitable reimbursement rate, which is set by Congress, because Congress decided they'd like to get credit for raising the charitable rate, which they, however, have not done since 1996. And so 15 cents a mile sounded great then. 15 cents a mile, not so good now. But the IRS sets the business rate, which is much more what, with the cost now, over 50 cents a mile.
That's totally-
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just wanted to clarify back to you that, because it might help move something forward, with the charitable rate, that's, the amount that is not taxed. The organization can pay their drivers any rate they feel that is worthy of their time and, wear and tear on the vehicle, but there's a tax implication, but it's beyond those 15 cents.
and there's a group in Minnesota, the Minnesota Council on Transportation Access, has really been working on this for several years. And I think if you to put in Minnesota Council on Transportation Access to a rules search, you'll get to a lot of their work.
Then the volunteer driver coalition,
Okay, great.
they're actually.
Yeah. So. So yeah, we just touched on volunteer drivers slightly here because there's a lot of them.
I just wanted to say something, TriCap did have a route that went from Onamia down to Princeton. On a shopping trip on Mondays. And we got rid of it because of a lack of riders. For 2 years, we had like 2 riders for total, so we couldn't justify continuing that route when nobody was using it. So we went to Onamia, Isle, the 169 corridor, all the way down to Princeton. And there just wasn't anybody using it.
And that, again, could be just taking it all back to, working within the communities, making sure people, are as aware as possible, making sure that new ways of getting that awareness out there, but also just trying to find what gaps are there and not there. Again, a north-south trip, we heard those are, people have ways to do that. So there's trips that don't exist that people aren't taking.
Does MinDOT fund the marketing team for you?
Do they fund a marketing team for us? Well, that's a really great. Yeah, well, you know the answer, why don't you tell me?
County Champion, the only team that gets funded marketing dollar, or I mean, funded a team in the state of Minnesota right now. So,
Well, you and I need to talk anyways.
yeah. That's the challenge too, right? Like it's, we're one of the only programmers that staff, right, communicating with the public on these routes too. So that's also a barrier to actually getting out and doing. Like our planning team right now is working in Shaker and Taylor's Falls actually on this. Funny that you brought it up. We were just at Taylor's Falls this morning meeting the city council on this and having really good discussions, but getting in front of them is incredibly accessible to our team just because we have the capacity. So I'd be curious to know how we can factor that into this conversation too. Because that's incredibly important too. I try to have this. I would just be curious what the capacity limitations are for you in that regard as well.
Right. So why you're the only one?
No, everybody gets a certain amount of marketing money,
Well,
everybody,
if it fits in their budget, but.
thanks to you, Ralph.
Typically salary fringe for just the people who operate fits in the budget. There's very little wiggle room for any marketing or advertising or.
And it's different based on your system, right? Like you pay your drivers differently than we pay our drivers than you pay your driver. It's like just the funding of it, it's like so different and unique based on the system. So because of our size, I mean, we're the largest rural system in the state, second largest in the country, just throwing it out there. Anyways, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that. But you know, then we receive a specific portion based on that, right? Like, so, which then is why I'm here. But I guess, yeah, I can imagine the challenge when we can these roundtable conversations at, MIPTA conference and going through them, cause I meet with the urban systems and we have things to talk about, and then I talk with the rural systems, and the rural systems. The challenges are, we took our trails, we were just on the phone the other day, and it was a completely different conversation. Cause who's doing your website development, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know, right?
So I wanted to, point out, Ali Rosa mentioned the report several times, and you might be wondering, so where's the copy of the report? We wanted to have this conversation first before we polished off every last word, and I think, part of it is we found in the qualitative that there is a need for more information, but this is a learning here. Didn't come out in the provider focus group that there might be need for, more directive or just more marketing dollars to the providers, to be able to get the word out there.
So I have like a million questions, but
Yeah. Well, at some point, we should all break and get out to the refreshment scene.
all right, I'll limit it to questions. Well, to your point, sir, I'm channeling Karen here, who's not here, but her unique concept of hubs, any kind of specialized transfer stations in our communities, I think if it came to fruition, could really help address what I call the first mile, last mile gap. Particularly as your service availability map shows in northern Mille Lacs County. So just a plug in to support that idea, the RTCCs, as I've seen you guys shaking hands. And then I'm curious, and I know while qualitatively it wasn't addressed, but just your opinion of the exponentially exploding development of technologies and AI and how our world's transforming. Where do you see in your 4 recommendations? I'm curious if you see a place there as far as an ability to connect resource with needs in a more effective, more accessible way. Or, I mean, ideally, hopefully in 10 years, we don't have to have as many of these conversations because we have vehicles that are more autonomous to be able to get to those areas. But for now, where do you see that playing a part in relation to the 4 key recommendations you have?
I see the engineer guys nodding vigorously, so I just want to go first. I think
Shouldn't leave you alone. Question and definitely a forward-looking, approach to the problem. And I want to refer to this piece of information, and I was looking at it before the meeting, and I noticed that there are so many different service providers, including Uber and Lyft. And there's another Lyft, which is an acronym. This is interesting. But anyway, getting back to the point. I think what I can say is that, depending on the type of the problem, there's different types of technologies that could help, and there's no one size fits all. Some of the gaps that we mentioned, they could be filled with more newer types of transit systems, could be outsourced, could be, provided by service providers, but in a form of, first and last mile access. I don't think I can comment on AI, has to be, studies how AI really helps, because we need physical resources and physical infrastructure to get people from A to B. But eventually, I guess, my point, would be more on the physical aspects of transportation, that we need hubs, we need the stations, we need, a safe, secure place for people to transfer from one service to another one. But definitely, artificial intelligence would help with making this, transfer more seamless. See?
Yeah, I was just gonna say too that, like the GTFS integration that Metro Transit currently has, like in Twin Cities, which makes it so easy to just go on Google and we don't currently have a lot of, companies that do that for work partners because of the route deviation yet, so like Airline Transit has now found a partner that are gonna work with a couple partners. So we're working on integrating that into Google Maps and Apple Maps here very soon, within the next couple of months. But that's like, I don't know of any other, there might be one rural system, Florida maybe is doing one in southern Minnesota, but. Because of the route deviation, that makes it so hard to get right now.
Exactly. GCFS is wonderful for rural, for urban areas, for fixed route scheduled services, but in rural areas it's difficult because of the deviation and also because of demand responsive transit that cannot be represented by conventional GTFS, but there is, if I get the term right, it's GTFS Flex, right? Which is a newer thing for more flexible services. And I had the opportunity to work with MnDOT on another rural, Minnesota transit project in southern area, the mobility as a service, platform that, was shown to be, the MAS or MAS, that, tries to connects or basically compiles all the information about different services in one app and, basically make booking and reservation possible. And that is only possible through, GTFS like information. So yeah, this is kind of artificial intelligence that can help, but eventually we need vehicles, we need drivers, maybe not drivers at some point, and also the transfer.
So I think about your example, where you said you discontinued this because there wasn't a demand. I think about like county law, it's like you just identify that there's. Like apps have distinctions, right? You can only access a certain amount of resources and information that we like, but my Lyft app, I'm not gonna get Uber available, public transit, so when I'm thinking of somehow technology, it's like. Maybe it's one day every 3 months if somebody in northern Watts County really needs to get to a grocery store or a medical appointment. But I guarantee that there's probably not a single resident in northern Malaya County when that moment arises that has the capacity or there's that resource that encompasses 100% of what physical and human assets are available at that moment. And I'm thinking that's where can we do something that can smarter people need do something then, so that something like your organization, you don't have to have a dedicated route, but you have a certain amount of resources available. Airline with a certain amount and so on. Volunteer drivers and have that true database. We've talked about it for years and yet we always miss the mark about having something that is easily accessible for a potential customer to go in and see 100% outside of the lovely manual resources, but you have to call every single one and probably make every single one. So thoughts? Can you make it happen?
I think that's, the goal, and Ali also mentioned the MnDOT's got a couple of things that they're trying to push that envelope and make it happen, but still in the developmental stage. If you want to see just sort of the autonomous side, there is the Go Marty service up in Grand Rapids that the finance numbers are still kind of unknown. Can you scale it throughout the state? But it is a service that is complementary to what Arrowhead provides in terms of time. They were able to set up kind of a fixed stop, but not fixed route network that is got 70 different locations within the city of Grand Rapids, and allows people to be able to order a trip similar to an Uber like a Lyft like experience. So the technology is in many ways kind of there. It's how do you then put it into this situation that, but the market isn't saying it needs to be there, and we need to figure out how to create that way to fill the gap.
And Tim, we did apply for to use move forward the mobility as a service, which is an app, could you tell you exactly what kind of options you have in this area, if I want to go from A to B, you can get it, so we're still demanding.
Well, I'd like to put Arrowhead on the spot for a second.
Please.
Because a big part of my life now is taking like nursing home residents and.
Yeah.
Veterans fishing. And your folks fishing, and I pulled up, we keep a boat at Flake Birch Resort on Rush Lake. I pulled up there was a gentleman in a wheelchair with a leg missing, and. When we came back from our trip, he was still sitting there, so I went and talked to him, I said, you should come out on our boat. And he said, well, I can't get transportation. So this goes to the key of what I was talking about earlier. Here's people in our area that can't participate in things because they have no way to get to our boat so they can go out fishing or go to the grocery store because of a handicap or a disability or whatever reason is hindering them, but it's right in your area. So that's why I'm asking you, what can this guy do?
Yeah, where is he?
By Rush, east of Rush Tickets, or west of Rush, sorry.
So conveniently enough, we are, two of our biggest focus communities right now is Rush City, Harris and Taylor Falls, Shaker. Those are our two biggest focus areas right now, and they are in Chisago County, so Isanti is kind of taking a backseat for us down here in the Ryan Smart territory. Ryan Smart is a living, breathing document, that we expect, we'll be doing a lot of modifications to over the next calendar year. But we are planning on, with the planning team, with the operations team, with development team, meeting with all of these communities, trying to see, are we meeting needs on a regular basis? Are we, hitting the right times? Is this working for your communities? We did extensive surveying in those two communities to see, when we were building out these routes, if it was meeting the needs. So based on the respondents that we, surveyed, this is how we're going to develop the routes based on the disadvantaged population data that the state of Minnesota provided and, several other data sets that we pulled from. We know it's not perfect, right? But that's why it's living and breathing, and that's why we're down in these communities. This is Sandy's been down here every single week. We were over here, or we were overnight, and we meet with these communities regularly, just continue to have these conversations and continue to move things forward. And the Shaker was added into the community plan, and I think within 2 days of it being brought to our attention that they needed better service. So it does happen, and it has happened already. So it's actionable, and we can actually show concept that when somebody asks for service, we were able to change, modify, and adapt.
I appreciate that, because I told them I was coming to this meeting and I would bring it up.
However, I don't think.
If I could.
That's something I learned.
We can hear you.
Okay, this is Steve Holland. I'm a county commissioner in Pine County, and thanks for letting me listen in. I got to get to another meeting, but it's all very interesting and real to me because I rely 100% now on somebody driving me someplace because I've lost my sight. So it's a whole different world. And I've looked at transportation in a little bit different light now, as I'm reliant on somebody every time I have a meeting, every time I have a doctor's appointment. So it's really without volunteer drivers, I couldn't do what I do because there is not public transportation. I was at a doctor's appointment in Woodbury this morning with my eye surgeon, and I couldn't get there on public transportation. And I'm going to an extension meeting 5 miles east of Hinckley. Right now, I got to leave for it, but because somebody's coming to pick me up, there's no public transportation to get me there. I can get to town for coffee. I can get to board meetings that are in Pine City with public transportation if I choose, but public transportation is just a tough nut to crack, and we've come miles and miles from where we were a dozen years ago, but we got a long ways to go.
So thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you. Any other? I know that also in group dynamics, that's why you do a focus group and you limit it to 8 people, is because there's some folks who don't want to talk when there's that many other people in the room, but they're dying to say something. So with Jessica and Michelle's permission, I suggest that maybe we can include the formal part here and go enjoy those terrific refreshments that they've set up, and we'll be around to talk to folks individually. Thanks again for coming. Thanks to and thank you for this. Thanks you for the
Hey, that's a really big
Yeah, there's expert. And closely, okay. And. Thank you.